Howdy, I'm going to talk about some ideas that I'm not sure about, but I think exploring possibilities is an important part of theory crafting, so please hear me out. To begin, could Des be human? There's actually a lot of compelling evidence for this. First of all, her room is filled to the brim with shoes, a massive pile of sneakers in her closet, ice skates under her bed, rollerblades, and none of the other holidays wear any footwear at all. Now, this could just be trying to show that she's not like the other holidays, but the literal mountain of footwear makes me think there's more to it than that. And you want to know something crazy? Most of the counter evidence people bring up against this theory make just as much sense, if not more sense, as evidence for it. First of all, we see Des's silhouette in the Tenna flashback during chapter 3, and she's got antlers in it. So case closed, right? Well, in the same scene, Chris is wearing their horned headband, and if you look in the top left corner, you can see it's actually Christmas time. If there's any time you would wear antlers, it would be Christmas time. And I've seen people say you can see her ears, and yes, you can, but it's not at all rare for antlered headbands to have ears. Next, in the corner of her room, there's a box with a bunch of odds and ends in it. When you dig through it, you find a bunch of stuff. Trash, junk, Azrael's retainer, and most importantly, a pair of shoes fit for hooves. This being in her room does not imply it is hers on its own, because there's also stuff that belongs to somebody else in it. And crucially, this is the singular piece of footwear that specifies it is fit for hooves. This does not imply that the other shoes are also fit for hooves, but also doesn't imply that they aren't. For example, if I said I found a full Monster Energy can, and then said I found another can, it's not clear if the second can is full or not. It's ambiguous, just like the shoes, and whether or not the object belongs to her. There's also this line from Noelle. I don't really do shoes. At least not unless they're custom made. We don't find any custom made shoes outside of Des's room, so maybe the ones in her box are Noelle's. This next one is what I meant earlier about making more sense if the theory is true. If Des is the knight, then she must have antlers because the knight does, you would think. But in chapter 4, when Rousey prompts you to think about Susie, you can instead think about the knight, and it starts to take off its helmet, before Chris pictures jockeying to him to throw you off. So the knight's antlers could be from its helmet. Real antlers and a helmet would be tricky, right? Well, its form is pretty amorphous, so that wouldn't be impossible or even difficult, but still. I'm genuinely just following the evidence that is in the game. I haven't heard a good reason why a non-human Des would have so many shoes. If they're custom made for hooves, you would not need so many. But if she's human, then maybe there are a bunch because Carol bought a ton in different sizes, because she didn't know what size Des would need. And I don't like this theory for something surface level like it would be cool. I think it could add more depth to the story. It could be a reason for Chris and Des having a closer connection than we know. It could add more weight to their clear uncomfort whenever they see anything human. And could even serve as an extra reason why the Dreamers and Holidays were so close. Now I'll address what I see as the actual counter evidence against it. We'll start with the weaker piece because the better one segues into the next topic. In the Shadow Mantle game, Noelle's true sprite is this deer, and the shadow creature's true sprite is this black deer. Both are turned into what we see in the game by a variable in the code labeled Toriel. But the reason I think this is weaker is because, well, Noelle is bipedal and the deer isn't. It's not literal, and neither can actually appear during gameplay. But I do still see it as a mark against the theory. Onward to the better evidence, in the Xbox version of Undertale, Sans mentions the antlered girl and her sister, talking about Noelle and Des. Now again, just like the monster can example from earlier, the sentence is ambiguous. You cannot say she has antlers, but you also can't say that she does not have antlers. But generally, it would be strange for her to be human in Undertale, as monsters are supposed to kill any humans that fall in order to break the barrier. I've seen people say maybe Asgore spared her since Rudy adopted her, and while it sounds vaguely plausible, considering most monsters don't know what a human looks like, it would require her to have less determination than Flowey, as he had save control before the Holy Trinity showed up, which sounds dubious. Although, if you believe in file attribution theory, she could have been slot 7 instead of Lemon Bread, though this is very sketchy. Also, when we see her soul at the end of True Pacifist, Technically, because Napstablook missed it, you could say that she missed it too. So, I've seen someone say that it wouldn't make sense because Flowey could have taken the soul. And at first I thought Flowey could have taken any of the 6 human souls. He just didn't have any in his current save before the Holy Trinity showed up. But then I realized the 6 souls plus the supposed human death soul would have been enough to break the barrier, so he could have done that. So that's actually a huge flaw in the theory. Now let's consider some alternative possibilities. I can think of 3. Either 1, Des isn't a human, and all the evidence for her being one is pointing towards something else. 2, Des is a human in Deltarune, and a monster in Undertale, which sounds dubious. Or 3, could Des be a hybrid? There's zero precedent for this, but there's a lot of lore relating to monster biology that does not add up, so let's talk about it. Starting with something I think can be universally agreed upon. In Deltarune, not all monsters are biological or bleed. The best example for this is the fire elemental girl you can find in the diner. She's made of fire. Fire cannot bleed because blood is water, and fire cannot be made of water. There's also the ghosts, who I'm pretty sure don't bleed either. So at least some of the monsters don't bleed. But what about Susie? In Deltarune, she's the only monster we've seen bleed so far. So what's the deal? We know that monsters still turn to dust. If they turn to dust and aren't inherently organic like the elementals and ghosts, shouldn't they all be made of magic and not bleed like in Undertale? There's also this dialogue from the rabbit kid, which says, "Ooh, are you the human that lives at the top of town? Wow, my mommy told me about you. Does it hurt to be made of blood?" That text certainly implies that bleeding is specific to humans. It wouldn't make sense for the kid to say, "Wow, my mommy told me about humans, which I'm unfamiliar with. Here's a non-human related question." Kids are curious about what they don't know. The kid doesn't know much about humans, so it is asking a question specific to them. You could argue it's just being a stupid kid, and yeah, that could be the case, but Toby Fox wrote it on purpose, and I don't think he would muddy the already murky waters of blood lore for a joke. Noelle also says this after asking Chris about Susie. "Wait, this isn't another trick, is it, Chris? Like when you put ketchup on your arms and told me it was blood? This really only makes sense if you don't know what blood actually looks like." Now there is one piece of evidence besides Susie that might say monsters bleed, but it's not convincing to me. This weirdo, the warrior, says, "But my blood is boiling for battle." But he doesn't seem sane at all, and all the time in Undertale people use hearts metaphorically, even though monsters are made of magic. So it could be the same here. Back to Susie, she has this line, "Everybody bleeds," right? But she is just wrong. We know that at least fire elementals and ghosts do not bleed, so the statement is false. Many people have taken this line and some of her other dialogue to infer that Susie is used to living in human areas. We know she used to move around a lot. Everyone always thought she was the scary girl, the bad kid, and she's very insecure about her tail. Some have taken the idea even further and say that she is actually a hybrid. She even has a line where she says that doctors don't understand her. But can hybrids even exist? If monsters are made of magic, I think it would just work. Maybe you need a monster to be the baby carrier, but I honestly think that either way it just works, because if they're magic, then they don't have to follow rules. But can humans and monsters have romantic relationships to begin with? People have been saying so since at least chapter 2, because of this line from when Chris clicks on the pop-up that says, "Monsters for humans in your area." But the same pop-up also has lighteners for darkeners in your area, so I don't think it's good evidence on its own. But what about Gerson's new dialogue from the 10th anniversary stream? Though first I have to say that Toby specifically said that this was just his interpretation, and that he cares more about our interpretation than his. But I mean, I've always thought that monsters and humans could fall in love, so let's take a look at what Gerson said. I never hated humans. Some of my best war buddies were humans. Of course, all of them are gone now, long gone. Humans and monsters weren't always enemies. No one really wanted to fight in that war. And the sides weren't really all that clear-cut. When the barrier was made, old friendships were broken, old business partners lost. Even some married couples were. I even knew one of the people doing the sealing. Heh heh heh. Seeing them in that beautiful magician outfit for the first time, for the last time, and at such a moment, it felt strange, I tell ya. Well, sorry that was a lot, but there's one part I want to zero in on, and the sides weren't really all that clear-cut. The basic implication is that some humans were anti-sealing and some monsters were pro-sealing. But I interpret it further, that some humans fought on the side of monsters and maybe even got sealed away too. Yes, it does say that some married couples were broken, but I refuse to believe that there would not be some humans who'd rather get sealed away than lose their monster partners. And remember that Papyrus says that the barrier is only one way. Anything can enter, but you need a powerful soul to leave. So what if the humans chose to get sealed away with their monster partners? They'd be long dead by the time of Undertale, but maybe they lived on through having hybrid offspring. You could say, why wouldn't the monsters use their souls to break the barrier, but they could have either not wanted to, due to them liking the humans, or they might not have known how to break the barrier yet. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing you just intuitively know anyways. So maybe Des and Susie are hybrids, maybe Des is a human, who knows? Only time will tell. But there are still more details about monster biology we've yet to discuss. Brace yourself for this next part. In Deltarune, do monsters use toilets? It is a strange thing to think about because, like, fire elementals and ghosts wouldn't, right? We see Asgore in front of a toilet and the sprite is called Asgore Piss, but that could just be a reference to people thinking that he's peeing on the flowers when you first meet him in Undertale because he's watering them, but he doesn't have a watering can. In fact, Asgore has other sprites labeled not piss, so this makes me think it could just be a gag. I believe we only see 4 toilets in the game, 1 in the Dreamer home, 1 in the Holiday home, and 2 in the Chapter 2 Dark World. I know that Undertale and Deltarune don't always use the same rules, but in Undertale they make it clear that the reason monsters don't need restrooms isn't because of their biology, but because of the food. Monster food is magical and is just absorbed, but regular food passes through your system. But like, how would that work for fire elemental monsters? And we don't even know how different the rules of the worlds are. Are the reason the only Light World toilets we see are in the Holiday and Dreamer homes because those are the only places we've seen that would need them? I know it's a video game and things are compressed, but like, there's no restroom in the diner. Places that serve drinks and food are supposed to have restrooms. They wouldn't even need to make a whole room. They could have just easily added a door that you can't enter in the top left corner by the register. Look how easy it would have been. And in the school, it's not clear if there is a restroom. Is Hometown just not very accessible for people who need them? Or is it just because it's a video game and you don't see the whole world? It really seems like Sans and Papyrus are from Deltarune, and they're the only characters in Undertale that know of toilets. But Papyrus doesn't know what they are, just knows that they're a thing, which makes me think maybe he's much younger in Deltarune, and that could be why we haven't seen him yet. Speaking more on this particularly punny pair, they're constantly doing human things that don't make sense for skeletons. Papyrus says, "I'd like to drive down a long highway, wind in my hair, sun on my skin." And in his battle, there's text that says, Papyrus realizes he doesn't have ears. Why would he not know he doesn't have ears? And also Sans combs his head, but he doesn't have hair. Did they used to be human or something? Like, seriously. I don't understand why on earth they are like this. That goddamn ineffable rabbit kid from earlier says this. If humans are made of bones, where do skeletons come from? Does this not sound like skeletons come from people? Papyrus also theorizes that humans descended from skeletons. Maybe he got it backwards. Also, Sans maybe bleeds, but like, maybe it was ketchup. I don't know. If Sans bleeds because he's a Deltarune monster, I guess all the evidence that points towards them not bleeding isn't true. Maybe he bleeds because he used to be human, but blood isn't stored in bones, so that doesn't make any sense. It really just seems like we have all these different puzzle pieces, but none of them fit together cleanly. Maybe I'm taking stuff too seriously. Or maybe I'm on to something somewhere. Thanks for watching. That's most of what I have to say. I just have 2 more things I have to mention before we wrap this up. Earlier, I neglected to ask if magic can even exist in the light world because fire elementals need it. But there really isn't much evidence magic doesn't exist. I know Noelle says she wishes she knew how to use healing magic in the real world, but like you could say, I wish I knew how to play guitars in the real world, and it would still make sense even though that's a thing you can learn. So maybe magic does exist in the light world. Maybe it's just that actually utilizing it is rare, or most people don't know how. So that could explain why they still have hospitals, but also we haven't actually seen the doctors if I'm not mistaken, so maybe the doctors use magic. And depending on how you define magic, stuff like the Dark Fountains could totally qualify. There's also the Secret Eggs and Forgotten Man who do not obey the rules of the world at all. Okay, last thing, and totally unrelated to anything else in this video at all in the slightest. But why does it seem like people have some sort of unconscious precognition? Chris used to pretend to rip out their heart to scare Noelle, and we have no evidence that they actually knew they'd end up doing that later. I wonder if it's some sort of unconscious precognition or like memories from a previous save. Like in Undertale, how after resets, Toriel can remember your preference for her pie and says she feels like she's meeting an old friend for the first time. There's also this line from Probably Des in the unused dialogue. I always did have that nightmare, walking into the darkness with the light shining from the doorway. Then the door slams behind me and everything goes to black. Is this that nightmare, or was everything else a dream? If you can think of any other examples for this, please let me know, but otherwise, that was it. Thanks for watching again. Bye!